This will be Notes on Jewish History in Turkey. The Turkish Jewish community is the oldest Jewish community. Just give a brief history. The oldest Jewish community in the world, that its history began 2,700 years ago, even before the destruction of the first temple of Jerusalem. Here we have, this is a map of more or less of what today modern day Turkey. I'm right now located right here in the little, in the peninsula of Gallipoli, very famous battle that occurred here in World War I. But each one of these little circles represents a Jewish community that has lived here in antiquity. Many of these communities are mentioned in the Talmud, and one community in particular, one that is located right here, and that is the community of Sardis, is a community which is even mentioned by the prophet Ovadia. The prophet Ovadia is a prophet that prophesied at the end of the first temple, and he speaks about the Jews of Sepharad, that with the Canaanites unto Tzarafat, and the removed of Jerusalem that is with the Sepharad. Now, usually most people translate today, and so are many of the traditional commentaries on the prophet Ovadia, translated the word Sepharad to be Spain. The Talmudic name for Spain, however, is not Sepharad, it is Hispania or Hispamia, as the Talmud mentions quite a few times. The name Sepharad being associated with Spain is not clear when did it start. We're not sure what is the source of it, or same as we're not sure what is the source and the connection of the word Tzarafat to France. Some people suggest it's the similar letters which are combined in these words. However, according to many opinions, the word Sepharad mentioned in this verse by Prophet Ovadia does not mean Spain, but actually means the city of Sephardis. The city of Sephardis is a city, Sardis, called today Sardis in Turkey, and Jews came there. Jews from Jerusalem came there. How the Jews of Jerusalem came all the way to Turkey? Those days it wasn't Turkey, of course, but how did they come there? They came there because after King David died, and after King Solomon died, during the reign of King Rehavam, the son of Solomon, the Jewish nation has split into two rivaling countries. The northern country of Israel, or the kingdom of Israel, and the southern kingdom of Judea. These both kingdoms were sandwiched in between two great powers, the Assyrians to the north and the Egyptians to the south. These great powers, like all great powers, like fighting. And the Assyrians and the Egyptians kept on fighting with each other. And many times they have conquered different lands and took them over from each other. Now, the kingdoms of Judea and Israel were sometimes aligned with the Egyptians and sometimes with the Assyrians. Once they decided not to pay taxes to the Assyrians came in and conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, and they have exiled the 10 lost, what we call today the 10 lost tribes. They were taken here to Karkemish, which is, of course, also today modern day Turkey. The southern kingdom of Judea lasted a bit longer, but even that southern kingdom, in the year 701 BCE, during the reign of King Chizkiah, the kingdom of Judea has joined other nations in a revolt against Assyria. They stopped paying taxes. And as a result, Sanherib, the then king of Assyria, has come and conquered most of the land of Judea and exiled its inhabitants. We even have here a relic from Sanherib's palace, which depicts a an Assyrian soldier carrying Jewish prisoners. Those people, especially from the city of Lachish, which was Judea's second largest city, were exiled to the kingdom of Assyria. That is how Jews end up in Sardis, which was then under the Assyrians. That's how the prophet Adi speaks 2,700 years ago about the Jews of Jerusalem living in Sardis, in Assyria. The Jews of Sardis have lived there until about 600 years ago, for about 2,000 years. Even during the Roman rule, they had special permissions to have their own synagogue, which stands still today. This is the synagogue. This is a picture of that synagogue just last Pesach when I was there with my kids. And you see here the Aron Kodesh. Right underneath the Aron Kodesh, there was a writing that said, "Here is the place where the Torah scrolls are kept." Looks exactly like any modern-day synagogue, just much, much bigger. Held more than 1,000 people sitting. Many other communities existed in what today is modern-day Turkey. For example, the synagogue of Priene, which is right here. I visited that synagogue this week. Other synagogues, like in Maria Andriaki, next to the city of Antalya, also has these two relics. Look on top. I don't know if you can read Greek, but it very clearly says, Oseh shalom b'imamav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Right? You could even read here, Amen. Now, obviously, Oseh shalom, make peace, is something that belongs everywhere. Also in Maria Andriaki. Other synagogues as well. There's a synagogue in Limira, a different old city. You can see here, this is the main hall, and this is a mikveh. Just as we have mikvahs today, it had a mikveh with a very, very nice decoration for the time. Mikveh is a ritual bath. Other Jews lived in Ephesus. We have records from Josephus Flavius and others who write to bring down different records of Jews living in Ephesus and other places. This is another place of in Turkey I visited last week called Hierapolis. Very beautiful place. I suggest anybody who comes to visit Turkey to come visit. And that too was a major center of Jews. There's some Jewish symbols engraved all over the city. As you know, I'm sure the Chicago Mitzvah campaign, as every other synagogue, survives on donations. This is not a new phenomenon. This synagogue here in Aphrodisias had a list of 130 donors to the synagogue, written in Greek. Some were Jews, some were not Jews, but all have their names as donors to the synagogue of Aphrodisias. Another synagogue, another Jewish community in Turkey is mentioned in the Kayseri. Today it's called Kayseri. In Talmud calls it Kayseri as well. That's the same name carried on for 2,000 years. The Talmud mentions that 12,000 Jews have died in Kayseri during the war between Shapur Malka and the Roman Emperor Valery. Of course, this was a very famous war between the Roman Empire and the Achaemenid Sassanid dynasty that ruled over Persia. It ended up with the Persians won the Roman. It was one of the most devastating defeats the Roman have ever suffered, because the emperor himself, Valery, was captured by Shapur Malka and was used as a stepping stool for Shapur Malka to climb on his horse. At that time, 12,000 Jews died at that war because, says the Talmud, because they were soldiers for the Roman Empire. It's very funny to hear, but in those days, Jews were very wanted soldiers and served different empires as mercenaries, fighting for empires, and that was their way of making money. Another city in Turkey, mentioned in Talmud many, many times, it's the city of Cappadocia. It's a city with, you have these very funny shaped rocks all over the place. And the city of Cappadocia is a city that has had and does have still an impact on every Jewish home today. Why would a city have an impact on every Jewish home today? Very simple. After the destruction of the temple, the rabbis gathered in the city of Yavne. And they wrote down the Jewish law that has been passed by tradition from one to the other. When it came to the laws of Shabbat, Rabbi Tarfon, a Kohen who served at the temple, stood up on his feet and said, you could only light Shabbat candles using olive oil. Another great rabbi, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, stood up and says, this was maybe true while we were all in Jerusalem. But now, what will the Jews of Babylonia do? They only have sesame oil. What would the Jews of Persia do? They only have nut oil. What should the Jews of Alexandria do? They only have other type of oil. And what would the Jews of Cappadocia do? They only have neft. No neft? Fossil fuel oil. The first place in the world which used fossil fuel was the city and the region of Cappadocia. And that is how the Talmud ruled. Madlikim bekol hashmanim. One may light Shabbat candles using all types of oils. Obviously olive oil, but also sesame oil, nut oil, other oils, including beitran ubeneft. Also, petroleum and fossil fuel oil can be used for Shabbat candles. Now today we all use these white, beautiful Shabbat candles, which are made from paraffin, a byproduct of fossil fuel, thanks to the Jews of Cappadocia. The Jews of Cappadocia, I mentioned many other times in Talmud. That's a beautiful city of Uchhisar, also in the region of Cappadocia. I've been there 3 weeks ago. And we read in the Talmud of Rabbi Akiva that came to speak there and to give a speech. Traveling rabbis is not a new phenomenon. It has been done in the past. Rabbi Akiva came to give a speech in Cappadocia and returned back to Israel. Other remnants you could see in Hattusha. You could see different menorah shapes in many places. That's a great, beautiful city of Nusaybin, Netzivin. It's a city which is on the border of Turkey and Syria. Very safe place to visit. I've been there, was there not far from there 2 weeks ago. And the city of Nusaybin, we had a great rabbi living there, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera. All his neighbors used to go bring, he was old and frail, but all his neighbors used to go bring the Paschal lamb in Jerusalem. He had one neighbor who was not particularly Jewish, and he also liked going and eating that roasted lamb in Jerusalem. And he told his neighbor, Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, the Jews don't even know that I come and I eat the Paschal lamb. You don't know? That's very old. Non-Jews are allowed to come and eat from any sacrifice they want, besides the Paschal lamb. And he came and he tells Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera that I fool everybody. Said Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera, ain't fooling anybody. They're not giving you from the tail fats. The tail fat is the most tasty part of the animal, and that is the part that is only given to Jews. Not a problem, said the Gentile. Next time I'll ask them for him the tail fat. Little did he know that tail fat is what is brought on the altar as a sacrifice. Next time he came to Jerusalem, he asked for the tail fat. They said immediately red lights were flashing. Who told you to ask for the tail fat? Oh, it's my neighbor Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera from Nesivin. He told me to take from the tail fat. Oh, they immediately understood the message, the hidden message that Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera sent them, and somehow he never made it back to Nesivin. But they did send a note back to Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera and told him, Ata beNetzivin umetzudatcha prusa b'Yerushalayim. You're sitting in Netzivin and you catch fish all the way in Jerusalem. Now, Netzivin is a city in Turkey, called Nusaybin, as I mentioned before, on the border of Syria. Okay, so now the Jews, let's speak about today, Jews of Turkey today. We have Ashkenazi Jews. I'm privileged to be the rabbi of the Ashkenazi community. The Ashkenazi Jews are today the oldest Jewish community in Turkey. They've been in Turkey from the year 1250 after the expulsion of Jews from Hungary, and after 1290, after the expulsion of Jews from France and England, Jews moved to Turkey. They've lived there until the Sephardi Jews came in 1492 and 1497 after the expulsion of the Jews from Spain. As you can see here in the graph, Jews left Spain, or 20% of the Jews of Spain left Spain and settled mostly in the Ottoman Empire, which at that time ruled over Turkey. About 70 to 80% of Sephardic Jews, of Spanish Jews, remained in Spain and chose to live their life either as Christian, as most of them did, or as hidden Marranos, or trying to hide their Judaism somehow. Not so sure how many people of them actually did it, though we do know that some did. The Jewish communities of those 20% of the Jews who left Spain were the most religious Jews of Spain, or those who really wanted to live their life Jewishly and not only in hidden. They wanted to wear tefillin, they wanted to eat kosher, they wanted to keep the Shabbos and the holidays, and that is why they took that dangerous journey and left Spain and were spread all over Europe, especially in where you see here the yellow, where was then the Ottoman Empire ruled by the Turks. When they came to Turkey, they opened various synagogues based on different the places where they came. The Jews of Valencia opened the Velasquez synagogue. The Jews of Toledo opened the Toledano synagogue. The Jews of Portugal opened the Portuguese synagogue. They all opened various synagogues according to the origin of where they came from. With the time, it was spread out into different communities based on regions in Istanbul or in Turkey, but eventually they all came together to become one big Jewish community. There were some Ashkenazi Jews as well, still living amongst the Sephardic Jews, and as they do till today. Okay, let's speak a little bit about today's Jewish community. And then we'll have a few minutes of questions and answers. As the rabbi mentioned before, it's already 11 o'clock at night, so I'm not going to go for too long. This is a picture of the Ashkenazi community of Ashkenazi shul, which I'm privileged to be the rabbi of. This shul was built 112 years ago in the area of Galata. It's another Ashkenazi shul called Or Hadash. This is a picture of the Rebbe's emissary, Rabbi Binyamin Gorodetsky, who opened a yeshiva in Istanbul in the 1960s, together with this gentleman called Rabbi Nissim Bechar. I'll move a little bit quicker. The Jewish life in the Jewish community has not been very, very strongly observant for many years. Here we have a letter from that the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent to Mr. Eliezer Birnbaum. Dr. Birnbaum was being one of the most noted authorities on the Ottoman Turkish, and this is what the Rebbe writes. Your letter on the 3rd of Elul reached me with considerable delay. I read with interest about your visit to Turkey and especially about the position of Jewry in Istanbul. I've also received a letter from Mr. Bechar on this subject. Unfortunately, it is extremely difficult to find suitable personnel to send there. This is the reason why my reply has been delayed, though I have not given up hope on finding some solution. Needless to say, the situation there is fully appreciated. Okay, and the Rebbe goes on and saying that every person has a responsibility to help other Jews. A few years later, the Rebbe writes in a different letter to the Chief Rabbi of Israel, and the Rebbe writes that we have opened a yeshiva in Turkey. However, because of the situation in Turkey, it is opened in a non-official capacity. And so Chabad of Turkey, as us, we also work in a non-official capacity, but have been here since 2001. In the year 2011, Rabbi Mendy and Miriam Porush and their kids joined us, and we have been here ever since. This is a conference of Chabad rabbis in Turkey in May 2019. Chabad rabbis and rebbitzins, the Chief Rabbi of Turkey sitting here in the middle, and rabbis from all different countries, little countries in Europe and Africa, have joined us for this wonderful experience that we had in last year, May 2019. Some pictures of our activities that we have in Turkey. We have, this is prayers in the Ashkenazi synagogue. Here is a Seder night, Purim events, Avram Fried concerts, regular Shabbos table in our home, Hanukkah on ice, Hanukkah celebrations, and daily minyan for kids, the fill-in campaign, making people happy in hospitals, learning Torah, and that's it. thank you for listening.
Wow, Rabbi Chitrik, that was amazing. How did you manage to pack so much into just 25 minutes? That was incredible. Let's open up to some questions. If anyone has a question to ask, right now everyone is on mute. If you do have a question, you can unmute yourself by pressing the space bar. Why don't we start off? I have a question for you, Rabbi Chitrik. I have a couple of questions. One question is, how many Jews actually live in Turkey right now? I also wanted to ask you about what is the position or the attitude of the Turkish government towards the Jewish community and also towards the ancient buildings or artifacts and the archaeological stuff. I assume that they very much want to preserve it.
Okay, today we have about 15,000 Jews living in Turkey, maybe a little bit less. Jews live quite comfortably here in Turkey and are quite happy where they are. Turkey is a beautiful country. Archaeological artifacts are found in museums all over the country. You're more than welcome to come and visit and see many of them. What else? Great place to be, great place to visit. Hopefully Corona days will be over. Everybody could hop on a plane and come over.
Chinuch, can you tell us about Chinuch for your children and where they have to go for Masifta or high school, the girls?
My kids learn in an online school, an online environment. When they grow older, they go to different yeshivas. You guys are in Chicago. I had a son who has just finished 3 years learning in Chicago in Masifta. Moving out this year, and that's life of every Chabad Shaliach all over the world.
Do you have like a gan there for the children and like a elementary school?
No, we don't. The Jewish community has a school. It is quite secular. The Jewish community has gone through a very, very strong transformation. 90 years ago, when the secular government of Turkey, a secular republic of Turkey has been established, has also affected the Jewish community as well. So the attitudes of the Jewish community towards preserving or living a Jewish life are not very, very strong, but we're working at it. It's getting better every day.
Shkoyach, a good ben shur, and thank you very much. A good nerve coming. Thanks.
Where do you get kosher food from?
From the supermarkets in America. Whenever we go, we fill up suitcases.
There's no shchita there?
There's a local shchita, but we are a little bit more strict about it, so that is why we have to bring with us.
But not from Eretz Israel. You don't get from Eretz Israel, or
we could get from Israel as well. Depends where our flight takes us to.
Kol hakavod.
Suitcases come wherever we can.
What other cities besides Istanbul are there a lot of Jews?
There are about 14,000 Jews in Istanbul, 1,000 Jews in Izmir, a little bit less, about 10 Jews in Antakya, 4 Jews in Adana, 1 Jew in Diyarbakir, 20 Jews in Bursa, 1 Jew in Iskenderun, 3 Jews in Ankara. That's about it.
That's why you do your traveling to all these different places. You were a few weeks ago and a couple days ago?
That's
or you
correct.
You're the only shliach there, or you have other shluchim with you?
I mentioned before that Rabbi Polish is with us as well in Istanbul.
He's in Istanbul with you. So,
that's right.
Thank you. Shkoyach.
Does anyone else have a question?
About the is there strong anti-Semitism there? How do the people treat the Jews there?
Number-wise, I'm sure there are many more anti-Semites in America than in Turkey.
So do you feel safe walking around with being obviously Jewish? Or is there
quite safe.
Danger?
Not a problem.
Wow. Very interesting to hear that. I think most people in America wouldn't have assumed that at all.
They seem to be so anti-Eretz.
Doesn't mean anything.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Okay.
Well,
thank you very much for listening, and I thank you and all the best, Rabbi.
Thank
Keep
you
up
so
the good
much.
work.
And we want to give you a bracha that you should have a lot of hatzlacha, much success and continued growth in the Turkish community. And with God's help, we should all meet in Israel with the speedy arrival of Mashiach.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
All the best.
Take care, everybody. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Sure. And stay tuned for the emails.